Good morning, everybody. I'm Nick Fountain. I'm the chair of the COA committee for the Raleigh Historic Development Commission, and this is the resumption of a meeting that began on December 9, and because of the number of matters could not be completed, and a number of you were told back then that we would resume today at 9 a.m. So for the benefit of those watching, I will call the names of the rest of the committee. Janine McCullough, you raise your hand.
I'm here.
Verche Height.
Here.
John Reese. Harold Millette.
Here.
All right, thanks for and Raz Raspberry, we appreciate you being here too, as counsel to the committee. So we have 4 matters to hear, if I recall correctly, and the first matter is 715 South Boylan, and on that one, let me see, what's that file number? We have Kaylin Ross, Patrick Ross, and Nathan, I wrote over the name, Romblatt, as well as Aaron Morton. And I would ask that each of you raise your right hand, and I'm going to administer the oath to you, and each of you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give and the matter being heard will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If you say I do. Aaron Morton?
I do.
Kaylin Ross?
I do.
Patrick Ross?
I do.
And Nathan Romblatt?
I do.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Okay, Aaron Martin, will you explain what this proposal is about?
Certainly. Let's give Tanya just a second. All right, this case is COA 169-2020 for 715 South Boylan Avenue in the Boylan Heights Historic District. The request is to remove rear stairs, construct deck, and install side yard fences. This is a view of 715 South Boylan from Boylan Avenue. And this is a house that's in the middle of a larger rehab right now. So this is a view looking down the driveway between 715 and 711. Next, Tanya. And you go forward. This is a view of the front retaining wall. This is on the south side of the house. So we're looking toward Boylan Avenue, but we're in the side yard. Next. This is a view looking back towards the house from the property line. You can see a tree somewhat close to the wall, and this is in the area where the fence is proposed to be constructed. Next. This is another pulled out view of that south property line, and you can see the corner of the retaining wall to the right. Next. And this is a view of the existing rear landing and stair at the back of the house. You can see that this is a ground level site at the front. It drops off significantly toward the back. Next. Staff suggestion is to defer the application pending the receipt of the following: built area information, site plan with existing tree information, and a tree protection plan. And pending receipt of the above, staff suggests that the committee approve with conditions. Next. We received new information from the applicant, including built area calculations, existing and proposed site plans, including existing tree information, a tree protection plan, proposed deck plan and elevation sketches, and standard deck railing and structural details. Next. We also received the addition of a rear building mounted light request to the application, confirmation that the construction of the fence will be neighbor friendly and the gate design will match, a final digital stain sample, excuse me, and the new information from the neighbor is existing conditions photo and an excerpt of the code.
Okay, thank you for that. So first, we'd like to hear from Kalen Ross or Patrick Ross, whichever one of both of you wants to speak first in support of this application.
Nick, why don't we let Pat speak first and then he can defer if needed?
Sure. I've unmuted Patrick Rost.
Okay, great.
Thank you. I wanted to thank everyone for having the extra meeting this month with all the holidays and everything going on. We're looking to put the deck on the back of the house. And one thing I wanted to clarify is the picture that was submitted by the neighbor. It looks as if you can step off of the existing porch onto the top of the fence. But if you look at the site plan, it's actually over 40 feet away. And once a new deck is constructed, the closest corner to the new deck would be 32 feet away from his fence. And we are asking for the same attachment as the neighbors on both sides have, which is where the finished first floor is of the house. And if you run down the rest of that block, that also has the same elevation concerns, 723, 727, 731 also have the same type elevation attachment that we're looking for. The fence on the west side of the property, we're going to match the existing fence that is there and run it up to the retaining wall. And we will jog it around the tree that's close to the retaining wall. And we've talked with staff about what we need to do as far as hand digging holes and cutting off any roots with a clean cut that are an inch or larger. On the east side of the property, we're going to match the existing fence on that neighbor's side, and the gate will match that fence also. All structural members will be on the inside. And the additional light we were going to put on the rear of the house above the stairs just to make it a little safer. I don't know if you have any questions for me at this time.
Do you have any specific comments you want to make about the staff's comments and whether you have any concern with the items they've expressed a need or concern about?
No, and I do appreciate the staff guiding us through this process. You know, we've agreed with the staff to make the fence on the west side. We initially wanted it higher to match the existing fence, but we agreed to make it at a 6-foot level, which is fine with us. And the other comments that the staff had, I think we've gone over with them, and everything seems to be in agreement.
Okay, that sounds good. Are there questions of Mr. Rush from anybody on the committee before we move to the other speakers? I don't see any hands going up. Kalen Ross, do you want to add anything to what Patrick said, or are you content?
I think I'm content.
Okay, thanks for that. I got a little feedback, so it may be because the two of you are too close together or something. Okay, Nathan Romblatt, and I apologize if I pronounced your name wrong. Tell us how to say it, and then we'll let you talk about your concerns with this project.
Yes, sir. My name's Nathan Romblad. So I'm the neighbor behind the property with the application.
What's your address?
What's that?
What is your address?
708 Dorothea.
Okay, go ahead.
And I haven't had the pleasure of meeting Patrick and his wife yet, but I'm definitely looking forward to the project. We've lived here for 5 or 6 years now. So obviously, I guess, you know, Patrick touched on it. My concern was about the height of the deck, not necessarily the, you know, the location. our property, as mentioned in the presentation, was that it slopes off pretty significantly. So, our request was that it be lower to, maintain the privacy of the privacy fence that's in place. So I had sent a picture from my back patio that's on the level with our back door, and also a excerpt from the UDO that I found. Is that available to pull up, or do y'all have that?
Nathan, this is Erin. The committee members have all been provided with a copy of it.
Okay. So let me see if I can just find the excerpt real quick. But basically what I found in the UDO and was something to the effect of the height of a deck not being allowed above, let's see. So no deck or balcony shall be permitted above the finished floor elevation of the ground floor. On the back side of the house, there's a full floor underneath the house with a walkout level that's there. So, I don't know if that would be considered a finished floor. And if so, then, it's my thought that would be the ground level. But even if they were to lower the deck, say 6 or 7 feet from the height that it's at, you can kind of see from that picture, then anybody standing on the deck wouldn't be, congregating and looking over the back porch. But I think that's about all I have to say. If anybody has any questions for me, but I would like to say I'm very excited about the project, So.
Okay, I think we understand that concern. Are there questions from members of the committee to Mr. Ronblatt as to his concern or the ordinance or the solution he suggests? Janine McAuliffe. I'll get back to John Reese.
Okay, thank you. I did just want to point out, I guess, while the neighbor was still in this conversation, that the UDO excerpt is actually applicable to accessory structures. And I just wanted to kind of make that comment that I don't know that this is applicable to a primary structure, and just kind of, get that information out there.
Yeah. All right, thanks for that. And I'm not sure this would be viewed as that the basement is the floor elevation we'd be talking about in this situation. John Reese.
You just made my point. In terms of it being a basement, it's not considered a ground floor, as I understand.
However, are there other questions from members of the committee? I want to ask Mr. Roast a question, though, with respect to the neighbor's concern. Would you respond to that, and would you respond to his comments about his hopes and dreams with regard to the height elevation of this deck?
Sure. First of all, it is a basement under there. It's not a finished floor area. There is an existing porch that you can see in this photo that is at that elevation, and we planned on continuing the elevation of that existing porch. And I guess really what we're asking for is just the same elevation connection that all the neighbors have on that section of the street. So I don't know how we can have more privacy. Maybe if he wanted to plant something or we planted something to provide more shading, I guess.
Okay. Thank you for that. I wanted to be sure you had an opportunity to comment or respond. And I don't know whether having a step down would make much difference, really. But in any event, unless it was 6 or 7 feet as suggested. And I can imagine the applicant would have some concern about how that really functions with the rest of the house. So anyway, sometimes topography presents challenges. Are there other questions or comments from members of the committee? John Reese?
Just one comment to you, sir, regarding your detail about how the deck is being attached to the house. One of the issues that I think you may want to be aware of, because myself as an architect made this same mistake several years ago, almost 20 years ago, and I'm now paying for it. I bolted, and it's up to code to bolt your deck to the foundation of the house or to the band board of the house. What you have the potential for, though, is if that band board is not pressure treated, and you have issues, what happens is water comes down the siding and settles between the deck and the structure of your house, which is what happened to mine. And I ended up having to replace basically the entire east side of my house and its vertical structure because what happened was water holds there and then wicks up into the wood of the studs above. So just a little bit of friendly advice in terms of that detail, and that you might want to relook at how you, what they recommend now is that you don't physically attach it to the house, and that there's some separation between the house and the deck just for water, just not to set and collect between those two, between that sandwich of the joint. That's all.
Okay, are there other comments or questions? Versailles Height.
Yeah, so just one quick question for the applicant. Out of curiosity, kind of based on what Nick's comment earlier was about the function of the home, what spaces are immediately, inside off of this deck?
The deck, you would enter the deck from the kitchen area, and then the other area that would be backed up along there would be like the eating area, dining area of the house.
Tanya Tully here. May I step in?
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to point out that y'all have been approving decks that sit above basements like this for years, and we have never had someone come back from the zoning review or permit review telling us that it's not allowed. So the guideline says it should sit at the first floor level, which is what this does. This is not unusual.
Thank you for that, Tanya. We're just trying to be sure we've explored all the situations and have all the facts before we make our decision. Any further discussion or questions from members of the committee? Anything else from any of you, question for staff or otherwise, before we close the public hearing? I take Janine's ready to close the public hearing. All right, so I'll close the public hearing and turn to discussion internally, and Janine had her hand up.
Thank you. I feel like all the concerned staff had in their report have been addressed, with the exception, I think it's just a mathematical question I have here is, I'm not clear, I saw that additional information came in about the built area calcs, but it's in a decimal type format that I can't relate to. Do we know kind of, it looks to me like it's not going to be problematic. I'm just trying to understand though. We typically look at percentages. Does staff have a sense of how this relates?
All right, I'll, without objection, I'll reopen the public hearing to hear from staff and explain the calculations.
I'll assume it's my go-ahead. I would actually like to kick it over to Pat and Kaylin to address that. I did some, excuse me, some quick conversions in my head when I was reviewing that information, so I can pull it up quickly, but they may be able to answer even quicker.
All right, so if I understand the question, it's can you tell us what these are in percentages? Is that right, Janine?
Yeah, I see that we've been given a 0.184 existing built area, and we're changing it to 0.217, and that's just not a format I can relate to.
I assume that's 21%, but, Ms. Ross, can you enlighten us with regard to the decimal and convert those calculations and be sure we have that part right?
Sure, it'd be 18 and 21%.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right, so with that, I'll close the public hearing. Any discussion? Are you ready for a motion? All right, who wants to lead off today? All right, Janine has got her hand up. She's prepared to make a motion.
Sure. I move that based on the evidence that's been presented in the application during the evidentiary hearing, that the committee finds that removing existing rear stair and constructing the deck is not incongruous in concept. According to guidelines section 1.3.1.2.6.8.9, 3.1.1.2.4.5, 6 through 8, and the following suggested facts 1 through 9. And that installing a rear fence is not incongruous in concept according to guidelines sections 1.3.1.2.6.8.9, 1.4.8. However, the installation of a fence taller than 6 feet in height is incongruous according to guidelines sections 1.4.8. And performing work in a tree's critical root zone without taking appropriate measures to protect from immediate damage during construction is incongruous according to guidelines 1.3.7 and the following facts 1 through 10.
All right. Let's see. Well, first of all, is there a second to that motion? All right, John Reese seconds the motion. Now we'll turn to discussion and potential adjustments to the motion. Did I understand that the evidence we've received now is that the fence would not be more than 6 feet? So we need to adjust. We need to adjust that in paragraph B based on evidence received at the hearing. And the other thing we would need to do, I think they indicated that that they would hand dig in the critical root zones for the fence post or whatever. All right. So that if that's the case, it may be we still want the condition there to make sure it happens, but that would take care of that piece of it. Are there any other things that came out in the hearing or came out in the new information provided that would change what we have here?
Do we need to say anything about them having provided additional tree protection plan information beyond just kind of working around that fence area?
Yes, I think that yeah, well, it'll, so that might be in the next motion on the tree protection plan.
Yeah.
Everybody understand the motion, the changes? Okay, everybody's nodding. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye or raise your hand. I see John Reese, Rashay Hyde, Harold Millette, Janine McCullough, and I all vote aye, and the motion carries. And we'll need a follow-up motion as to the decision on this matter. Janine.
Yes, I move that a certificate of appropriateness be approved for this application with the following conditions. We already have a tree protection plan, but that it be implemented and remain in place for the duration of construction. So that's 1 on staff's report. 2, 3, I think we know that it was shared. The design is neighbor friendly. And we know that now it's 6 feet in height. So 3 and 4, and 5 and 6.
All right, based on the staff comments, everybody.
Based on staff comments, yeah.
Yeah, is there a second to that motion? Harold Millette moves seconds that motion. Any discussion? Everybody understand the motion? All in favor say aye, raise your hand. All right, I see 4 hands went up. I vote aye, and the motion carries. And Ms. Ross, you all will be working with staff from here to move ahead on it. And Mr. Rumblatt, I think planning is going to be the thing to look at with respect to your side of the fence or theirs as well, perhaps. Everybody will benefit from some privacy on the side of that hill. So thank you for that. The next matter is 713 Oberlin Road. And we have a number of persons to speak on that matter. And I will ask Dave Gorman, Ted Van Dyke, Brian Richards, Joyce Morgan, Susan Adley Warwick, Ruth Little, Sabrina Good, all raise your hand, and because I want to administer the oath to you as well as to Colette tonight. Do you and each of you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give and the matter being heard before this committee will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, say I do when I call your name. Colette?
This is Colette. I do.
David Drummond?
This is Dave. I do.
Ted Van Dyke?
Ted Van Dyke, I do.
Brian Richards?
I do.
Joyce Morgan? You may be muted, Ms. Morgan. I'll come back to her. Susan.
I do.
Okay, Susan Adley Warwick?
I do.
Ruth Little?
Did you hear me?
No.
Oh,
Ruth
okay.
Little? Okay. Sabrina Good? Sabrina, are you muted?
I do.
Okay, thank you. I think that's everyone. And Mr. Birch, I didn't administer to you because I presume you were appearing in the role of counsel.
Yes, sir.
Rather than as a witness. So Colette, would you explain this proposal for us?
I will. Just one moment while Tanya pulls up the presentation. Tanya, this is the app. Okay, you got it. All right, so this is case COA 174-2020 for 713 Oberlin Road. It is in the Oberlin Village Historic District, which is a general HOD. The request is to construct a detached house, construct 9 townhomes, install a driveway, and construct a parking lot. So the existing site is a surface parking lot. This is a view looking north at the site from Oberlin. Next slide. This is a view just a couple feet to the north from the last base of the site. Next slide. And this is a view on the opposite end of Oberlin looking south back at the site. Next slide. For context, this is a view from Robert Street. This is the property immediately adjacent to the site. You can see the parking lot in the background, which is the area we're talking about. Next slide. Staff's recommendation was to defer for more information to be provided. The applicant did provide a presentation, which I believe Ted will be presenting to you. And then we have a number of people signed up to speak.
Yes. Thank you. Ed, if you'll walk through your proposal so we can see where we are. And even if we defer, I think we need all the information we can get.
I appreciate all the feedback you guys can give this morning. This is a pretty unusual case. It is new construction in a new district. We are a commercially zoned site. We are zoned by the city OX3 Urban Limited, which means the city sees office mixed use with buildings pulled close to the street and limits to parking. In theory, the Urban Limited offers us 16 units with no parking or 10,000 feet of commercial space with no required parking. I realize that's of limited interest to the Historic Districts Commission, but just to give you the context, that's what the city zoning map currently calls for on this site. It was originally constructed, as you can probably tell, as overflow parking for 702 Oberlin, which is a four-story building just across the street. We can do the next slide. This is another view of it dead on. Just to reiterate, we've got Roberts, which is a dead-end street to the north, and Bedford to our south. Another interesting turn here is that the site just to our north, which has Oberlin Rising on it, is not in the district, nor is the property to our south just across Roberts. So we have no historic district on either side of us on the main thoroughfare. Obviously, our neighbors to the west on Roberts and Bedford are in the district. The top north property is a rental owned by an out-of-state owner, and the property on Roberts is a vacant parcel right now. It's locally owned, but it is vacant. Next one. Again, that zoning I explained to you, and the hatched area also shows you the limits of the historic district, which is quite interesting. We're sort of at the southeastern edge of the district, as you can see. And again, you can see that the parcels to the north and south are not included. Next one. In fact, and I guess this was just when we were trying to find some context, it's about 650 feet up Oberlin Road to the next property that is in the district along Oberlin on our side of the street. And the district does not extend to the south. So we've got we're kind of our own little island there. Next one. This was just interesting. Went in the archives. This slide's from 1970. We can't really see any major structures visible on the site as far back as 1970. And again, that parking lot was probably constructed in about 1981 when 702 Oberlin was constructed. Next one. I think Colette and Tanya's photos were better than mine, so we'll just go on. I think you're all familiar with the site. This is just that illustration along Oberlin of what we see along our route, and again, sort of the puzzle of what we apply as our context along Oberlin, since the next two major structures there to the north are not in the district. We go on. We're going to talk about some defining features that we looked for in the district before we show our solution. Very common to see brick bases on the buildings. Very few of the houses in the district are entirely brick, but there is a lot of brick foundation work and brick crawl spaces. We've got some brick column bases as well. There's square columns, there's round columns, there's tapered columns. Porches, of course, are a defining feature. Next one. We've got various geometries. The 12 and 12 gables is quite common. We've got those lower pitched roofs on porches. We have special windows that we'll talk about. We have dormers enclosing upper levels in many cases instead of full stories. Okay. Here's a couple of our historic properties. The Graves house in particular is 2 stories plus. It's a full 2-story house plus the turret. And again, we have the steeply pitched roof, we have the brick base, we have a special window shape. Similarly, the Hall house has interesting decorative windows. It's got a bay window there, again, steep roof pitch, and brick foundations once again. Go on. Here's the Turner house. It has a 2-story porch in addition to the other features. And we'll talk about height in a little bit. Michael Birch is on and has had some experience with this house. I want to say that the eave height to the bottom of our roof, correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, is somewhere in the 26-foot range. Is that correct? 27 feet, perhaps?
Correct.
Yeah. And that's going to be important.
Measured from where?
I believe that's from the grade, Nick.
From the grade to where?
To the eave, which is the start of the upper roof, to the sort of
right.
Where the gutter would be, the bottom edge of the roof.
All right, to the gutter. All right.
Yes, sir. It's a good one. Okay, we'll move on.
Please.
12 and 12 pitches again, just sort of showing how common some of these features are. Our special vents and our brick foundations. Again, these are on Roberts, which we adjoin that street. Keep on rolling. These are newer houses that are obviously were not built during the period of significance, but they are in the district. They've got that 2-story plus geometry. They have many of the features we just discussed, the masonry bases, the lower pitch roofs, the gables, vents used as decorative elements, and that's sort of 2-story plus height, which we'll talk about a little more. Again, these are in the district. They're not considered contributing because they were built after the period of significance. Of course, our project will also be built after the period of significance. So we just included to show the variety that's within the district. Next one. These were also approved prior to the establishment of the district. They are in the district. I believe there was some interaction with this developer in RHDC because they adjoin historic properties on Oberlin, unlike us. This is the strategy they use, that sort of 2 stories to the eave height and then concealing a 3rd level in the gables and using similar window shapes and other elements. Although they did not, again, receive a full COA review, they are in the district. The front are 2.5 stories, as you can see, 2 stories plus a 3rd story concealed in the gable, and then the buildings behind them are 4 stories, 3 complete stories, and a partial 4-story and roof area. Just wanted to show that as that's probably the last. These are still under construction and they're built on Oberlin Road, multifamily residential similar to us, and now in the district. Proceed on. Here's our site plan. There was some discussion about setbacks. We too are curious about setbacks. We've had many discussions with the city of Raleigh about the right-of-ways. This is our best thinking right now. Starting at Roberts, they're going to ask us for an 11-foot right-of-way dedication. The red lines show the property lines as they will be after we grant the city the right-of-ways that they are requesting. They are going to request a 6-foot sidewalk and a 6-foot planting strip on Roberts. And as you can see, the blue line shows how we've made our best effort to align the faces of our buildings with the faces of the buildings on Roberts Street, which vary. And only the first 2 houses on Roberts there are in the district. The 3rd one, which is pulled farther back, is not in the district. So we have our 2 townhomes on the northwest corner there, and then we have a townhome that faces Oberlin, as you can see on the northeast corner. Interesting, and I want to point out and make it very clear, and the DRAC had some positive comments about this. We've broken our townhome clusters into 2 clusters of 4. Our initial design had 1 long row of 8 townhomes, so we've broken that scale down. The other thing we've done is we've turned the units at an angle to justify them to Roberts and Bedford rather than to justify them to Oberlin. If you go up, and I have a slide, but it's not in this earlier package. If you go up and take a look at the houses just to the north of the community grocery, the 900 block, there are 3 houses in a row that all mirror the same relationship to Oberlin Road. They justify back to the neighborhood, not to Oberlin. It gives us an opportunity to create more of a sawtooth pattern. It breaks the massing of the row houses down even more. It gives us a similar front yard geometry to the 900 block. Our setbacks here, again, assuming the city has settled on this, is a 6-foot planting strip and an 8-foot sidewalk. And that red right-of-way line, as you can see, would be the edge. These footprints, I just want to make clear, and you'll see a 3D model shortly, these footprints include our porches. So the actual structure of the house would be somewhat 6 feet or so farther back than what these footprints outline, but we wanted to be sure to show the complete outline, including the porches. So we would be about 14 feet off the curb line here, assuming that the city settles on us and or you guys approve this as appropriate. Then down to Bedford, same situation. They want a 6-foot planting strip and a 6-foot sidewalk. And that puts our southernmost unit right at the right of way, but as you can see with our blue line, we are not too far off or within sort of striking distance of being in the same alignment with the houses farther down Bedford. Again, the little nose to the south that we're counting from is actually the porch, not the body of the house. So the bulk of the house will be back farther and even closer to alignment with the rest of the structures on Bedford. We've got a 10-foot buffer back here. We are currently showing a 6-foot fence. We've had some discussions with Sabrina and the Friends of Oberlin that may be more fence than they think is congruous with other things in the district. We're happy to keep that dialogue open and get your input today as well. And the street trees shown are just going to be the required street trees by the city for their streetscape plans. I will say that the city's, we think, is coming down this block with their streetscape. They are showing a 2-foot brick band and an 8-foot side or a 6-foot sidewalk. We've been told that if we redevelop the site, we will be tearing that out and building this instead. So we're still trying to get to the bottom of whether that's the case or not. But the Raleigh Streetscape Manual does call for the 6-foot planting strip and 8-foot sidewalk, which we're happy to install if that's the final verdict. Okay, go on. We'll come back to this if people have questions. Here's some elevations of one of our units. This is the end unit. Again, most significantly, trying to use gables, trying to use porches, trying to use brick bases, lap siding, and again, the 2.5-story strategy, if you look at the side elevation there, is to have our eave height, which we've discussed, somewhere in the, I got 24-foot range, depending which site we're on and where we're measuring grade from, but certainly keeping our eave height under that 26 to 27 feet of the Turner house in every case. And then we've got a gable here. This gable is a 12 and 12, which we found to be very common around the district. And we've used a dormer configuration to conceal the upper level square footage, which really is our bedrooms. These are pretty simple units. The ground floor is a 2-car garage and a bedroom or flex room. The middle floor is living, dining, and kitchen. And the top floor is 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, and a small rear porch. And what we've done with that sort of mansard looking roof there on the rear is we've created a HVAC corral, so we will not have to have any HVAC units sitting on the ground. We think that'll keep a cleaner site and keep the noise up and off the street and out of the, and we'll have more yard, more green, and less pads and HVAC units scattered around the site. So that's the reason for the sort of flattened porch roof that you see in the back there. And we can come back to this. We're using note on the windows. We did approach this with window openings that are very much in keeping with what you see around the district, but we've altered the mullion pattern to clearly show that this is not old, but it's new. We would love the committee's input on whether they think that's an appropriate approach. And we're happy to be flexible with that. But our initial thought was to use traditionally scaled openings and innovate a little bit with the mullion patterns to clearly define this as new construction. Next one. This is the middle unit. You can see our special shaped windows there, the pediments that are a lower pitch than the main roof, a couple of different dormer varieties. And we can go on. Here's our model, which I think tells most of the story. This is looking from just south of Bedford. You can see house on Bedford that's past the empty lot just there in the back. This really, I think, illustrates our sawtooth approach, our justification of the houses to the side streets rather than to Oberlin, and how it really creates I think, a significantly different look in terms of scale and massing. It really breaks these down into individual units rather than to a series of flat row houses. And take a look at the next slide. This is looking the other way from Roberts, and you can see how that effect plays out looking down over in the other direction. Again, and we've been through these elements, but just to point them out again, the brick bases, lap siding, lower pitched porches, variety of different columns, square, round, gables, and dormers to complete the composition there. We did break this gable down on the north side here since we talked to Drac. It's got a double gable on that north side plus a, you can see a shed roof on the rear, trying to add more dimension and trying to break down the scale of that face. And then in the back there, you can see our two row houses that go down Roberts. They're detached. There's just two of them. I'm not sure we have another slide of that or not that shows this better. Maybe try one more time. There you go. So that's those guys. And what we've done, I've got a slide in my new presentation. I'm sorry I don't have it. We didn't have it by this time. But what we've done is we've done a two-story porch, which we've seen is very common in the district. Then we stepped down to a one-story porch, and that eave line that you see on those two porches actually will align with the porch of the house to the west on Roberts. So we've tried to step down into the neighborhood with the scale of the porches as we head west there. Okay, try another one. This is the elevation seen dead on from Oberlin from across the street, and I think it more clearly shows how our strategy of breaking this into two pieces and having some green space between the two rows works. And of course, we got stoops and stairways and sidewalk connections to Oberlin for everything. That might be the last one, Tanya.
All right. In addition to Mr. Van Dyke, who are the others that want to be heard in support of this application? Mr. Michael Birch, do you want to speak now or one of the other folk?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's Michael Birch. Just make one or two comments, and I'm not sure if anybody else will be speaking at this time, but I'll let them speak up if they want to. I just want to make a note. I think Ted mentioned this at the beginning, but we have reviewed the staff comments that we received in advance of the earlier meeting. We have begun to make changes in responses to those comments. We have also had communication and meetings with area stakeholders, including the Friends of Oberlin. And we have, again, begun to make changes in response to those comments as well. Given the remote meeting rules and the timing of when documents have to be provided to the committee, obviously we were not able to do that for this meeting. And so our intent for this meeting is to, make our presentation, which Ted's done, but then also really receive the committee's comments and desire to come back at a future meeting with, updated exhibits that reflect our changes in responses to comments that we've received today. So again, reiterate what Ted said, we're looking forward to hearing from the committee.
Thank you for that, Mr. Birch. Mr. Gorman or Richard, do you want to be heard right now or hear from, or let's just go ahead and hear from the opponents, be sure we hear their concern.
I'll just make, this is Brian Richards. I'll just make couple quick comments. I'm here if there's any questions about site or landscape. And to note that we did identify the trees out on site. I know that was one of the questions for staff. There are, for the most part, not really any significant trees on site. There are a total of 5 trees that are technically above 8 inches in caliper. 4 of them are very small. Some of them are severely covered by vines, would likely not be worth saving. There's one tree that is nice, that is a 22-inch maple out on Bedford that would likely end up landing in the new right-of-way dedication. And when constructing the new sidewalk would likely also go. That's just, if there's any questions on that or any other site conditions, happy to help.
All right. Okay. Then I'm turned to the folks listed here in opposition, and I got an email giving an order in which you all wanted to speak. And so with that in mind, I'll call on Joyce Morgan first.
Good morning. My name is Joyce Morgan and I live at 2206 Bedford. I am the first house that you get to from Oberlin. I'm opposed to this because it is going to have a lot to do with the way my house is. It's going to destroy my foundation that I have as when you all agreed to put up 616 Oberlin apartments. When you all were building that, my house did a lot of shaking. You could go in your bathrooms and you would hear the digging sound. I'm not opposed to putting something there, but I would hope that you would put something there that would be in respect to the other homes in the area. If you would look right there on the corner of Bedford and Oberlin, there is a building. That building is very respectful for the neighborhood. That architect built it to complement the neighborhood, not to disgrade. And that is all I would like to say at this time. But I do hope that you will take in consideration that Oberlin Road is a very busy road. And if you approve this, these people are going to have company. These people will be coming in and out to the grocery stores, to their jobs. What are you going to do with the traffic? There is no way for you to come out of Bedford Avenue, look north on Oberlin Road and see what's coming. You can put a traffic light there. That would be great. Not necessarily for me, but for the well-being of Raleigh. But I just think that you need to think this through very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. We are certainly trying to think this through and do the very best thing we can for the village of Oberlin and the city of Raleigh and private property owners too. And we are aware of all those overlapping concerns. Ruth Little, your name was listed next.
Can you hear me?
Yes, but be sure to speak up.
Okay. I seem to be muted, but you can hear me.
I can hear you, Ruth.
All right. I am speaking from two agencies. I'm an architectural historian, and I prepared the Oberlin Village Historic District overlay that was created in 2018. I also moved into the neighborhood in 2006 and have lived here 14 years. I live one block off of Oberlin Road on Bedford Avenue. So I'm a neighbor. I will be a neighbor of this project at 713. It is my understanding that the design guidelines under which the 904 Oberlin Road buildings were created are the precedent for what would fit into the neighborhood, be in harmony with the historic district. And it's my understanding that those buildings, 904 buildings on Oberlin Road, are technically 2 stories and have a 25-foot high roof peak. And if that's correct, that is what we would like to see followed for 713. The design must harmonize with the character of the historic buildings in the district. even though there aren't historic buildings on either side of 713, the district is a cohesive unit. So the new project should have traditional forms with, and in Oberlin Village, that means front dormer windows, either sloping dormers or gabled dormers, and front porches. And looking at the row of 3 bungalows in the 900 block, just to the north of the Oberlin, of the community grocery store, there at the corner of Van Dyke, we see craftsman style houses that really represent, I would say, the average historic character of the district, the most common house type in the district. Ted Van Dyke's design, new design, fits into this craftsman template. I particularly like the way that he has stepped the facades so that each townhouse feels like an individual unit. This follows the stepped design of the 3 bungalows in the 900 block of Oberlin Road, next to the community grocery store. And those face east rather than facing the angled alignment of Oberlin Road. That stepping is a very good continuation of that pattern in the 900 block of Oberlin Road. I think the only feature in Ted's design, or only architectural feature, that mars the craftsman character are what appear to me to be completely plain solid glass windows. I heard Ted speak about muntins, sort of contemporary muntin pattern, but I could not tell from his drawings quite what he means. The archetypal craftsman window that I would like to see in the facades of 713 would have an upper sash with vertical muntins, small panes in the upper sash, and the lower sash would be solid glass. I'd like to see some variation of this upper vertical muntin sash on the facades of 713. I think the rear windows can be more contemporary because they're not relating to the district on Oberlin Road. But this project has the potential to be a real asset to the historic district if we pay very careful attention to the roof height, the whether or not there are, I'm going to call them party decks on the rooftop, which overlook the houses to the rear and take away from their privacy, and the design details. That's all I have to say right now.
Thank you, ma'am. And before we move on, Tanya, Ms. Little referenced 904. I'm going to be sure I know which one she's talking about. Are those the townhouses or apartments that are just south of the Turner House? Is that the address for that?
I do believe so. Colette will correct me if I'm wrong.
All right. One more thing. Was that in the district when that happened?
No, sir. That was before the district. RHDC's involvement was during the rezoning process.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Adley Warwick, Susan Adley Warwick, we'd be glad to hear from you.
Good morning. I want to thank the committee for letting me speak to this issue. My address is 128.
You're breaking up. I'm not sure what the
my phone to 713. Okay, I'll move the mic closer. Does that help?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. It's about a 20-minute walk from where I live to 713 Oberlin, so I can't claim to live in the district. I worship at 625 Tower Street, which is just around the corner from 713. And that provides occasion for me to be in the neighborhood on foot quite often. I helped to prepare the paperwork for submitting the HOD application, and I've been active with Friends of Oberlin Village since 2011. And I thank the commissioners for the expertise that you bring and the time that you invest in preserving Raleigh's historic neighborhoods and landmarks. I think the Oberlin HOD is unique. The design guidelines describe the overlay as incorporating a variety of architectural styles. It points out that many of the buildings were constructed in a vernacular mode, and it emphasizes the role of porches in the district. It seems to me that by approving the overlay, that council wanted to honor the cultural and social history of the neighborhood, which was the largest Reconstruction era neighborhood of free blacks in Wake County, and which has persisted, or vestiges of it have persisted through Reconstruction, Redemption, Jim Crow, the Great Depression, and the historic segregation era. It seems that to honor that, the project of honoring that history can be facilitated by architectural design. And it's not so much because of the great architectural examples, although there are some very beautiful and charming historic buildings in the district, but it's that social history and that sense of neighborhood and community supporting each other and striving together. I do appreciate the challenge to a designer when there is so much vernacular architecture to refer to in constructing a design. I would like to focus on 3 issues: the height, the built area to open area issue, and setbacks. Design guidelines 3.3.7 to design new buildings to be congruous with the height of the historic district in terms of height, etc. And the height of new buildings should generally fall within 10% of well-related nearby buildings. When 904 Oberlin was rezoned, the developer was held to 2 stories and a peak height of, not height from grade to eaves, but a peak height of 25 feet for the buildings that are facing Oberlin Road. And when Ted Van Dyke presented this case to the CAC meeting last week, he said that the peak height of his design for 713 would be 42 feet. UDO 5.4
You're breaking up again.
and structures should be congruous with it. Oh, I'm sorry. I looked at my notes instead of facing you. I will try to do better. Where the height regulations are allowed, height encroachments of the underlying district conflict with these height requirements. The height requirements of the historic development standards should control. Now, in terms of the built area to open area ratios, I'm referring to design guideline 3.3.12, which say that the proportion of built mass to open space should not vary significantly from the surrounding buildings, tribute to the special character of the district. All I had to go by in trying to evaluate that was the Wake County Real Estate Search, which provides lot size and heated area for the addresses along Bedford from 2206 to 2214 Bedford Avenue. And the two lots, 2207 Roberts Street and 2211 Roberts Street, which are in the HOD. The average ratio of built to open area for these properties is approximately 36%. And if you take out 2214 Bedford, which is kind of an outlier, it was built in 2014 prior to the overlay. Actually, the average would be closer to 31%. When looking at 713 Oberlin, if I estimate 800 square feet per unit as the footprint and just add those together for 10 units, it would be 54%. I'm sorry, 52%. It seems to me that in order to be in compliance with this guideline, about 7 units of the same size would be allowed for the project. So I acknowledge there's been discussion back and forth about the setbacks, and I just wanted to comment. It's probably perplexing to look at the shape of the district and decide, well, what are we going to compare to? Will we compare to the 900 block of Oberlin, or will we compare to Roberts Street and Bedford? I would say that in thinking about this, that the priority should be to try to choose a setback that most continues the residential feel for that block, or picks up a residential feel for that block, in order to tie it back into the 900 block as people pass by on Oberlin and get a feel for the district. And that, I thank you once again. Thank you for giving this time so close to the holidays, and I hope that you have a good holiday.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for those thoughtful remarks and for your math work as well. Sabrina Good.
Yes. My name is Sabrina Good, and I'm the founder and the executive director of Friends of Oberlin Village. I'm also a descendant of one of the founders of Oberlin Village. So I'm speaking in behalf of the Oberlin community, the Friends of Oberlin, community supporters such as the Regency Center, which has just donated $80,000 for our efforts to continue to preserve the area, the neighborhood. And so I do want to make it clear that we are very open to development on this lot. We in no way think that it's going to remain empty. But this lot is very crucial to the historic district, because when you approach Oberlin Road heading north, this is the gateway corner to the historic district. So it is our thought we do want something that is very cohesive and very residential in feel. We know that Raleigh is a quick growing community. Houses are staying in the market approximately 5 to 8 days. And we're hopeful that this developer can meet all the criteria to build there. But we are also certain if they cannot, that there will certainly be another developer next in line who might be able to do so. One of the major concerns that we have had is that in the 3 previously built complexes, the actual built out had no resemblance to the presented plan to the RHDC and City Council. So it is our wish that RHDC, the COA, would enforce and include guidelines that would hopefully help preclude that from happening once again. We are particularly concerned about the rear-facing balconies, simply because the trend in Raleigh is to have rooftop terraces, and we are very concerned, especially with the 3rd floor balcony, that the roof will be removed, and yet we've got a upper level terrace, which is how the plan was originally presented to me when it was first rendered. It was an open terrace. And so I would hope that maybe by preventing the 3rd floor balcony, then we can remove all chances of that slight change of a roof being missing, and that becomes an upper terrace. We are also want to have consideration for parking. As the plan showed now, I believe there are 10 separate residential units. If you take the example of the holidays and each resident has 2 different guests coming in 2 different cars, that's 20 cars. And so I beg the question, where do those cars park? Do they overflow and start parking in front of the homes on Bedford Road and on Robert Street? The other thing that I would simply ask is that that we try, or that the guidance is to stay within the setbacks and the restrictions that are in place. Ted had mentioned that the streetscape may continue up to Robert Street. I did have a meeting with Sean Driscoll about 3 weeks ago, and he presented plans to me that it stops at Bedford Avenue. But if it were to go beyond Bedford Avenue, then that 6-foot sidewalk would turn to an 8-foot width sidewalk, which means that the houses would sit even closer to the street traffic, and also for the walking neighbors that go through there. So I'm just simply asking that due diligence is done there. I know there has been some pushback about the lot size doesn't give us viability to do certain things, but that also begs the question, the lot has been there as it is for years. And so I would hope that the City Council and RHDC don't feel compelled to make exceptions, because possibly due diligence wasn't completed by the developer as to what the possibilities could be for that lot, unless the assumption was, oh, we can get them to change the rules and the setback, and that won't be any problem. So at this time, I want to thank you for your time, and we are very open to having continuous discussions, but we are very concerned that a precedence will be set if a lot of these guidelines are exceptions are made, and then when other properties are built on Oberlin Road, they'll continue to use this as a benchmark for it, maybe going to 3.5 stories or 4.5 stories and continuing that trend. One small footprint for 904 Oberlin, the rooftop homes in the back were changed once the plans were approved. So that was not in the initial plan that was presented to us. And we did have a discussion that we wanted all facing properties to not dominate the historic homes. There are very few historic homes that are left on Oberlin Road. And I thank you.
All right, thank you. And Sabrina, Ms. Good, what I heard was you raised a concern about the rear balconies, and you raised a concern about parking, and you raised some concern about, well, the city might handle setbacks, which I think it means the Oberlin area. And then your 4th point, I wasn't exactly sure how to put that down as a bullet point from my notes. And so maybe you can tell me, what was it you were trying to express beyond the setback?
My fourth point is simply that anyone who purchased that property should have done due diligence as to what or could not be built there. And so I kind of question the pushback for wanting to exceed heights or get exceptions on setbacks, parkings, and density.
All right, thank you for that. And so now I'm going to turn to comments and questions from members of the committee, and those can be addressed to the applicants or the opponents. And for the current purposes, I want to make sure, is there anybody else that wanted to be heard that hadn't said what they wanted to say, at least for today's purposes? We're probably headed toward a deferral after we get all these comments, and we'll find out what all the comments are. But, okay, so I'm not hearing anybody.
Mr. Chair, this is Michael Birch. I did want to just address a few of the comments that were made. I think it would be helpful to make these before the committee's discussion.
Mr. Birch, I'd be glad to hear from you on height, on built area to built mass, on the gable treatment, on the balconies, the parking, the setback. Those are all items that I noted from one or another of these speakers.
Yes, sir. And I believe that's where my comments will fall. So first, with regard to height, there was reference made to the height restrictions placed on the what is being referred to as the 904 Oberlin condos. It's the property that sits between the Turner House and the Hall and Graves House on the east side of Oberlin. I handled that rezoning back in 2015, and I can read for you from condition 8 that applies to the buildings fronting along Oberlin Road within that development, and it says the maximum roof eave height as measured along the front facade of the building shall be 25 feet. So that 25-foot height restriction that's been referenced, that is to the roof eave. It is not to the peak. And I will note that height limit only applied to really the first 15 feet of depth of the buildings fronting along Oberlin Road. So I did want to clarify that, and I think as you heard, Mr. Van Dyke testified to that the roof eave height of these proposed structures is about 23.5 to 24 feet. So we are actually below the roof eave height of the Turner House as well as the 904 Oberlin condos. And so we're within that condition, that aspect. With regard to setbacks, this has been in the context of discussion about what the streetscape will look like. I want to be clear that what occurs within the streetscape area, which is going to be a 14-foot wide streetscape, what happens within that 14-foot wide area does not at all dictate the setbacks of the structures. What we're talking about within that streetscape is whether it's going to be a planting strip, a 6-foot planting strip and an 8-foot sidewalk, or what the Oberlin streetscape is from a city project standpoint. But I want to be clear that while there is some unknowns as to what's going to be applied from a treatment standpoint along this property, that's not going to affect the setbacks of the proposed structures. Let me also talk about the rear balcony on the 3rd floor. This is not a party porch or a party deck. This is more of a coffee porch. I think as Ted testified, this 3rd floor balcony is off the master bedroom. So it is not off like a common living area or kitchen or something along those lines. It's the master bedroom. And to be clear, there was reference to some things getting built that weren't reflected maybe the same during the process. None of those were subject to the COA process. And so, as you all know, whatever's presented and whatever is part of the COA package and what gets approved, what is built has to very much conform to that, and any changes has to come back through the COA process. So there's not this risk that a roof gets removed and it becomes a party deck. That cannot happen without coming back through the COA process, and that's certainly not what is proposed as a part of our current package. With regard to parking, again, we are compliant with the city's zoning and parking requirements. This property is surrounded by public streets. Just like anytime guests come over to any house, only 1 or 2 driveway spots and the rest are parking on the street. But again, there's nothing unusual about this project with regard to parking. We are compliant in that respect. With regard to the built upon area, I think we can come to the next meeting with some additional information on this point. Obviously, it is a surface parking lot today. And we are providing, again, some open area, some amenity area, transition area as a part of the project, but we can bring some additional information to the next meeting on that point.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a comment or two if I may as well.
Who's that?
That's Mr. Van Dyke.
Yeah, all right, Ted, go ahead and make a comment. I have a question for you once you make it.
Sir, I didn't hear that quite.
I said that you go ahead with your comment and then I will have a question for you.
Very good. Just a couple of items. I appreciate Michael's clarifications on height. And I do want to emphasize to the committee that creating a 40-foot tall 3-story building is nothing that we necessarily are intent on doing. The reason for the height of these buildings is because we are trying to match the residential character of gabled roofs and asphalt shingled roofs. If this was not a historic district, we could certainly do a 3-story flat roof townhome here and bring the height of these buildings, or the ultimate height, down considerably. The reason that we reached a taller structure when you account for the entire roof structure above our eave height is because we are trying to maintain a geometry of a gable roof that's consistent with other structures in the district. And I will also add that, and I'm sure others on the call are well aware of this, that Oberlin Road was where the image of prosperity was being mostly played out. The Turner House and these houses, if you study their facades, they were trying to give an impression of prosperity and of presence along Oberlin that's quite different than approach to the more vernacular structures back in the side streets of the district. So we were trying to honor those roof geometries that the Turner House and the other houses have. We are trying to keep these as residential structures. And as Michael points out, we're about 24 feet to our eave height, and that's when we start our roof geometry. We are open to the committee's suggestions and input on that in summary. And also just we will bring some more information on open space and buffers. I will point out that the curb line of the existing parking lot is about 3 feet from the western property line right now. There's a good deal of overgrowth, especially because one lot is a vacant lot and the other one is a rental that's has not seen a lot of landscape attention. But we'll be putting a 10-foot landscape buffer minimum along that, and it will be all new plantings, all be highly maintained. So the transition to the neighborhood will be considerably more green and considerably more well-maintained and attractive than what is on the site today. And I'll leave it there.
Right. Thank you. My question for you, Ted, is this. With respect to the unit that would be at the northeast corner, I'm just picking one as an example, but at that one, what is the square footage of each of those 3 floors? I know you got a garage at the bottom and I guess some kind of entry hall or something, but tell us a little bit about the square footage and because we're certainly going to be looking at lot coverage anyway, but I want to see how that actually works as a practical matter.
I appreciate that question. Pretty simple. We took the minimum footprint that we thought would actually make a practical townhome. Here, we're trying to make these fairly modest square footage wise. Nick, so the ground floor is about a 20 by 20 garage, which will have capacity for 2 cars. The underlying zoning only requires 1 parking space per unit, but we'll have a 2-car garage. So that, if you imagine that's the back half, then we've got about a 20 by 20 space on the front. So the first floor footprint is roughly 20 by 40. Some of these are a little smaller. The 2 on the northwest corner are 18 feet wide, but imagining the maximum is about a 20 by 40 footprint. The front half would be a bedroom, a closet, an entry foyer, and the stairways heading up to the 2nd floor.
Okay.
Then the 2nd floor, you pop up there, that's your living space. You've got a living room, a dining room area, a kitchen area, a pantry, half bath, most likely. So that floor is 20 by 40, about 800 square feet.
Okay.
And then the 3rd floor is 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, plus that 8-foot porch. So the heated square footage is going to be somewhat lower up there. I want to say it's going to be in the 700 and some square foot range for 2 reasons. 1, we've got our outdoor coffee porch. And 2, we do lose some square footage when we go to this gable strategy because some of the area under those gables we've created is not full height space. So we've taken away some of the top level space to try and achieve the scale that we're trying to create by putting the gable roofs up there instead of a flat 3rd floor roof. So we got basically there's 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath townhomes with 2 parking spaces. So the total heated square footage is going to be in the 1,800 square foot range to 2,000, and there are 2,400 square feet gross if you include the porch and the garage space. So not big units.
Okay, I'm going to open up questions from members of the committee. Who wants to go first? And we're looking for comments and concerns with respect to this project, so that we'll see what we get next time, because we're not contemplating the vote right now anyway, but we need to give them whatever we think they need to be worrying about or looking at.
Nick, are we discussing making just general comments, or are we specifically opening this up for questions to the applicants?
Well, we're doing both, and I haven't closed the public hearing, so the questions to the applicants are fine. Questions to the neighbors or opponents is fine. But if you want to tell them what's worrying you at this point, you think you know enough to see, you go ahead. So
I'll go ahead and do my spiel.
Well, Harold, you're
taking notes through this whole thing, if that's okay.
All right.
Item 1, I want to make sure that we all understand that 904 Oberlin was not part of the COA process when it was approved, and it was not part of the. It was built and approved prior to the designation of this as a district. I know it's still under construction, but the majority of it was built prior to the designation of this district. I heard that the applicants say that they considered this site somewhat of an island, and I want to bring up Ms. Staylor's point, which I thought was very poignant, and she couldn't have said it better because I was thinking it myself. This site is the gateway to this district, and I think a very important site because not only is it kind of the introduction to the Oberlin neighborhood, the site that is just north of this, prior to that, the site on the corner of, I think, Mayfield or Van Dyke and Oberlin, before that medical building was built, it was very reminiscent of, there were 3 little houses there that were shotgun-like and very much part of the character of this district before they were torn down. And again, we lost those in that in the raising of those 3 buildings for that office building. 3.1 guideline. I'm concerned, and I'm having a hard time supporting this application without a great deal of thought and redesign into it, simply because of the setbacks, and in 3.1, the setbacks and spacing of this district. Every little house that is shown in this picture that is of the original Oberlin Village, minus the Tucker, or excuse me, I'm going to say it wrong, the White House, and then the 2 that are Preservation, North Carolina, they are they were pretty much set back off the road. They were 1 story, and there was a great deal of, or at least some space between them, because they were individual private residences. 3.7, the massing and height and form of scale. Like I said before, most of the houses in this district were 1 story. Granted, there are the 2 houses that are 2-story, but they are still horizontal in proportion, with vertical elements or vertical proportions as elements within the horizontal massing. 3.8, proportions of the facades, i.e. that, again, going back to the notion that most of the character of this neighborhood is wider and lower to the ground, with vertical elements that, like in the 2-story houses. 3.9, the proportions and order of the elements. While the designers seem to be very much trying to match certain elements in the design, it seems to be more of a petting zoo of those elements rather than an overall understanding of how they compose together to work as a total whole that is congruent with the district. Most of the homes were built with found elements. I think that the 2 houses that are set up by the Preservation, North Carolina, the history of those is that the green one, I think the guy was a mason or a contractor, and basically used the old Jimmy Cash song of "Bring It Home One Piece at a Time" from his other projects to help build it. So therefore, there are some one-off elements in it, but that is not necessarily consistent across the district, because most of the houses were built with much less ingenuity. Issue 2 in that same realm is that the multiple roofing elements, they do not dress simply because the district are very simple gables, and 1 gable with 1 kind of porch element, and that was it. And then finally in 312, the built mass to open space, putting a wall of townhouses along Oberlin at the height that they are requesting, regardless of whether they have pitched roofs or vertical roofs or flat roofs. Just pushing these things together into a solid street wall, even though they are in the sawtooth form of the original houses, that helps, but it doesn't necessarily create a kind of understanding of the district, which was not multiple housing, not a building of multiple units, but individual and detached homes. So with that, I will end my presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Harold Millett, I think you had your hand up a minute ago.
Yes, you mentioned just whatever concerns were weighing on you now, and mine was in regards to guidelines 3.3.7, with just the height of the buildings in relation to the existing neighborhood buildings as well. So I just want to throw that out there.
All right, thank you for that. Christy Height.
Yeah, I'll say I agree very much with John's sort of rundown and summary, and I think that was very well done. I just want to also emphasize that I know that there's been a lot of discussion about the height of the eave, and what I personally think has been done here is a little bit of manipulation of the design and that rule in order to kind of like achieve what a building that's too too tall. I think that the eave line, even though it is at a certain height and then the roof does start to pitch at that point, what you have done is kind of created another occupiable conditioned floor space above the eave line. So technically, and when you're showing the dormer details and things like that, the true eave line based on that as an occupiable floor is probably higher than what you are suggesting. So anyway, I just wanted to make that comment about I don't necessarily buy, meeting the technical eave line. I think what you've done is brought an eave line down to the third floor level and then continued to create occupiable space above that.
All right, I heard that. Then who else wants to be heard? Have you got comments as well? Who hasn't spoken? Let's see. Well, let me tell you what my concerns are. First of all, I absolutely agree this is the gateway. Number two, I believe that because this is a new district, that this one here is of even greater importance as precedent setting for the district. And it is really unfortunate that the district wasn't created sooner, but none of us can change that. And so we have a number of buildings here that that probably wouldn't be approved today if they were included in the district. But we have to deal with it. I do think that we will need to relate this structure to other structures that are within the district. But nevertheless, we'll have to give some acknowledgement to the fact that they are on Oberlin, which is a thoroughfare compared to some of the other side streets. I do wonder whether the property owner could consider detaching these, but using connectors which are set well back from the front face of the house, so that they are connected structures and not detached, which would help with setback issues related to detached dwellings. I think that can be done with narrow connectors well back from the front facade. And so to think about that, I know it will cost a unit or two, but it might be useful to consider as we do this. So I had those thoughts about how we might need to go. Obviously, our job is to approve and disapprove applications, but we throw out suggestions sometimes as well, and particularly in this context where we're likely to or where we're going to defer it in light of those comments. I like the breakup of the roof lines and the detailing. I agree with Verche that it was done that way with a purpose to break up the reality of the additional occupied space. But I do think breaking up the massing to the extent that these things are going to be connected at all is a help. And we surely are not looking at 904 as precedent for this project. Not in my view. Jadine McAuliffe, and after those comments, you're the one who hadn't spoken yet. What are your thoughts?
Thanks. I think a lot of what I'm thinking has already been said with the concern of the scale and the built area. One thing that I did want to bring up is I haven't heard any thoughts about possibly if the configuration were to stay as it is with sort of 2 rows of townhomes on Oberlin and then the 2 rotated on the northwest corner. Those 2 townhomes, to me, if they do stay townhomes, have the opportunity to be more of a transition scale down to the adjacent bungalows on that street. And I just wanted to put that out there, that it seems as if something there could really be considered in a different scale than what is happening on Oberlin.
All right, are there other questions or comments? For the applicants, I think there's concern across the board on the committee about the massing and the height. And also a recognition of the significance of this site in this relatively new district. And so that will be, I think, fundamental to how you back up and look at this. And of course, the neighbors have done a good job of tagging the factors, but they're going to be trade-offs. To provide the garage, that helps with the parking. But it's also true that when folks in for their holiday luncheon, if we ever get back to the good old days, there's going to be cars all over the street, and that's going to be true in every neighborhood, and that will be true here, I think. So with that, are there other comments from the rest of you? Anything else needs to be said before we consider a motion to defer? All right, it's all silent. I'll entertain a motion to defer this for additional feedback. And I can't remember what I think maybe this has not been to DRAC yet. I hope it gets to DRAC before we see it again. That might help, might save some money from a design standpoint as well. I really hate to waste a whole lot of drawing if we can do it. I have a motion to defer from John Reese, a second from Janine McCullough. In discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye, raising your hand. The motion is unanimous, and all are in favor. So that matter is deferred. I really do want to thank everyone for on all sides of this issue for their thoughtful remarks, their thoughtful consideration, and I thought everyone has come forward in a sincere effort to try to do the right thing and to be thoughtful about it rather than saying, I want to do what I want to do or that I don't want anything to happen. So thank you for all that. And we look forward to seeing all of you again when the project is ready for us again. So with that, we'll move to the next matter, which is number 179, 2020, 330 East Davie Street. And that is Colette and Laurie Jackson. And so
real quick, I think it's probably.
I'm sorry, what? Who is to speak on 330 East Davie Street? I'm going to administer the oath and proceed on and administer oath to Laurie Jackson and Colette on that one. And you and each of you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give the matter being heard to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If so, say I do. Colette?
As far as what he was doing, so they're adding the.
Wait a minute. Y'all are too many people talking at once. Too many mics on.
This is Colette. I do.
Okay. Laurie Jackson?
This is Colette. It kind of sounds like she's on a call.
The supply.
Okay, so I'm going to come back to Laurie. And so just mute her for the moment. I'll come back to her and we'll see about the oath momentarily. But while she's finishing that, Colette, can you explain this project?
Yes, I can. Just wait one moment while Tanya pulls up the presentation. All right, this is case COA 179-2020 for 3 Davie Street. It is in the Prince Hall Historic District, a general HOD. The request is to partially remove a wall, remove steps, and construct a new retaining wall. Next slide. So this is a view from Bloodworth Street. You can see here, this is the portion of the wall that has failed. Next slide. This is another view from the intersection looking into the property. Next slide. And this is a view from exactly across from the last picture, looking from the property into the intersection. Next slide. And just for context, this is what the site looked like before the wall failed. Next slide. Staff's recommendation is to discuss the amount of grading proposed, and pending the results of that discussion, staff recommends approval with conditions.
Okay, is Laurie Jackson, are you available?
Okay, bye-bye. Yes, I apologize. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, and so I want to administer the oath, and then I want to hear from you. You swear or affirm the testimony you have to give, no matter being heard, to be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If so, say I do.
I do.
All right, thank you for that. Now, look, tell us about the proposal, and obviously there's concern about the grading.
Yes, sir. Thank you all. Again, apologies to staff and the committee for that technical difficulty there. I did just want to sort of introduce the project. The owner of this property has a long history of supporting preservation in Southeast Raleigh. He bought the Tabernacle Baptist Church at the corner of Moore Square in '99 and eventually sold it. That's the vintage church there. He's been involved with Explorers Middle School and moving several historic houses to the historic district that is now in place in Prince Hall. Many of those relocated houses are part of that district. So I just wanted to start out with that. I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee has. We are fine with staff recommendations, happy to work with any of the necessary entities with State Office of Archaeology in the event that anything was covered during the removal of material from the site. In addition, we are working with a civil engineer and a surveyor to get a boundary and topographic survey of the site, as well as to precisely locate the new location of the proposed retaining wall in relationship to the property line and the property to the west. And I will, I'll give it back to you guys. Thank you.
All right, well, if you will, then, Laurie, how far from the boundary line do you anticipate this new wall would be?
We're anticipating approximately, no, I'm sorry, from the property line or the boundary wall?
Yeah, from the property line, where is the new retaining wall, the wall that we run north-south?
Yes, sir. So in order to keep the footing of the new retaining wall on the owner's property, we need to come off of that property line approximately 2 feet so that no portion of that wall crosses the property line. So at this point, that is probably about as close as we could get.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. Obviously, we got some concern because the last wall fell, and we trust that's going to be built a lot better. But
yes.
At the same time, that's that is a concern. Are there questions from members of the committee. Let's see, who's up? Middle block, Janine, you go.
Thank you. That was a test. Okay. My question is for the applicant, just obviously with some of the concerns and comments and staff made regarding trying to mitigate and minimize regrading and heavy machinery, why is it not an option, or what has driven you to want to rebuild in a new location with that retaining wall versus just leave it in the same location?
Sure. So this failed wall, the remnant of the old structure that was on that property, is approximately 10 feet off of the property line. So the thinking behind this is eventually this property will most likely be redeveloped. And due to the significant change in grade from the west side of the lot to the east side of the lot, moving the location of the new retaining wall just makes the owner, it just makes that portion of the property more usable. If there were ever to be new construction on the site, that's a portion of the property that the owner would like to be able to use. However, because none of that, there are no plans for that at this point, the rationale was, instead of rebuilding in the same place, go ahead and get it really at the perimeter of the property and sort of move forward from that. Also, we want to construct the wall in a way that we could add onto it potentially in the future. So there's no, again, there's no desire even to remove the remnants that are running east-west and that set of rear stairs. That's all going to stay for now. But in the event that there was more grading done to the property, we'd like to be able, to invest in this wall and be able to sort of go from this point forward.
Are there other questions from members of the committee? Rochelle Hyde.
Yes, question for the owner's representative. In accordance with staff's concern regarding guideline 1.3.14 about it is not appropriate to use heavy machinery or equipment on sites where doing so may disturb significant archaeological resources. In moving this, there would obviously be some further excavation required. What is the process? What is going to be your process and means and methods for doing that?
That is a good question. I think we will need to be educated to some degree on the proper process, as you say. Our plan is to get guidance from the Office of State Archaeology on sort of the proper way to go about this, and of course we would be monitoring the site as the work was being completed. We need to be educated also, frankly, on what significant archaeological resources, what that, what the sort of, how you quantify that. So it's our understanding that there was at some point a store on this lot. I think that it predated the residence that we see. The remnants, the stone remnants now are from a foundation wall of a residential property. So we don't know very much about the early history of the site. So it could be an opportunity in some ways to learn more about that. But the owner, we are committed to doing it in the right way, but perhaps that could be something that we could sort of share with staff and also kind of document as we go. So that would be something that, information that we would have, but of course would also be available as a resource to RHDC as well.
Great. And then just a quick follow-up question on that, related, I think. Are you all in discussions with the neighboring property owner, just as far as moving this retaining wall that close to their property? I know you mentioned 2 feet off of the property line so that the footings for the retaining wall won't be in the other's property line. However, for the structural integrity of that particular home, what considerations are you all taking for that?
That is also a good question. The property owner is very concerned about the wall, the failed wall. And so the owner has been working with him to try to get this resolved, get the proper plans in place to get this resolved. For your reference, the owner's fence that runs on the east side of the neighboring property, that appears to be directly on the property line. So the house, I think it's about 5 feet off of, so the fence comes out, it runs east-west about 5 feet, then it turns and runs south along the property line. So the actual foundation of the owner's house is well, I would say 5 feet, easily 5 feet off of the property line. So if we came an additional 2 feet east of the property line, his fence should still be able to stand up, and hopefully not. We wouldn't undermine his fence at all, but I think we will be well out of sort of the danger zone for disturbing the neighbor's, the foundation of the neighbor's home.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions, comments? Anything for staff? Okay, are y'all prepared to close the public hearing? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing and turn to discussion. Do you all have any concern as long as we address the potential sift for archaeological material while we're moving this dirt and the remnants of the foundation? Okay, then let's see about a motion then. John Rich, you want to do a motion?
I will certainly try. Based on the information contained in the application and staff's evaluation and this public hearing, partially removing a wall, removing steps, and constructing a new retaining wall are not incongruous according to guidelines 1.2.2.3, 1.3.1, 0.9, 0.12, 0.13, 1.4.1, 0.2, 0.6, 0.8. However, the amount of grading required to construct the new retaining wall may be incongruous to guidelines 1.2.2, 0.5, 1.313, 1.314, with the following suggested facts 1 through 8. There I stop. Correct?
Right. Is there a second to that motion? Second from Harold. And now for discussion. And it's clear, I think, in number 4 that it's clear in number 4 that the wall has failed, the one on the west side. I want to be clear that in relation to other applications we might ever get in the future, this one we're dealing with particularly because it's already failed and it's down. And a lot of dirt that would have been behind it is also down. And so that I think is helpful in terms of how we might have to handle other matters that come before us. Is there any other discussion? Do you think there's any findings we need here that we don't have right now? All right.
Nick, I'd like to make a follow-up motion that we.
Well, let's pass this one first. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye, raising your hand. All right, the motion carries. It's unanimous. See all the hands up. So that carries. And now for the follow-up motion.
I propose that I move that we approve this application with I think we just approved this application.
Well, let's see if that gets a second. I think we probably need those 3 conditions. And I see some.
Then let me amend that with the following conditions 1 through 3 as recommended by staff.
Let's see if we get a second to that motion. Then Janine seconds the motion. And so we got a motion on the floor with a second with the 3 conditions. Is this are y'all content with the staff getting the results of that assessment? And I understand that to mean that it would come back to us if there's still a problem, or some way or another, somebody would wave the flag. Discussion, Janine.
Thank you. I guess the question I have is how it's going to be determined. I think Lori Jackson kind of touched on this. What will be a significant archaeological finding? I guess that's the only thing that kind of is a question to me. At what point, what is the metric or trigger for that to come back to us or staff, I guess, and just to make sure that maybe that determination gets made with staff as opposed to by the owner?
Yes, I take this to mean that the significance would be based on the assessment of the OSA and as read by the staff. And so that there is third-party involvement in making that determination of compliance with that condition. All right, any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. All right, that's Janine, Verche, John, Harold, and me. And so that carries unanimously, and that matter moves forward. And we thank you, Ms. Jackson, for making time for us in the midst of your busy morning. So with that, we'll move to the next and last matter for today, which is the subdivision, I believe it is. And 801 North Bloodworth, the question of subdivision of a lot. And we have listed here Colette Canane, Shirley Thomas, Georgia Frazier, John Dahl, and then Alicia Bailey Taylor from planning staff and Vermont Purefoy. If all of you will raise your hand, I will administer the oath to you, and each of you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give, no matter being heard, will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If so, say I do. Colette?
This is Colette. I do. I also would like to let you know that Vermont Purefoy has been replaced by Daniel Stegall.
Did you say Daniel Stegall?
Yes, and he did sign an oath form.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, can I interject just really quickly? I guess I need to make the statement as far as I know the applicant or that Jolie Thomas that will speak on her behalf. So I do believe that I can still, make an impartial decision, but I just wanted to make the people.
Thank you for that disclosure. Now, Ms. Thomas, with respect to the oath, you say aye or I agree?
I agree.
Ms. Frazier, I do.
I do.
Ms. Dahl? Mr. Dahl?
This is Sean Dahl. I do.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Bailey Taylor?
I do.
And Mr. Stegall?
I do.
Okay, with that, then Colette, explain the proposal to us.
All right, everyone, this is case sub 46, 2020. It is our first subdivision, which you may recall we mentioned at the previous business meeting that we would start reviewing these in this setting. So the application is for 801 North Bloodworth Street, which is in the Oakwood Historic District. Half of the property is in Oakwood. The district line kind of lies where you see the 801 in this picture. And the request is to subdivide the parcel into 2 lots. Next slide. So this is a view of the existing property from Bloodworth. The portion with the house is in the district. The garden is not. Next slide. This is just another view of the second half of that property. Next slide. Staff's suggestion is to approve. And just as a reminder, since this is our first review of this type of case, the guidance is that you will conduct a hearing to review the property in terms of its congruity with the special character of the district. So it's a little more limited than a standard COA application.
Okay, I understand that. Let me ask Mr. Bradford a question at this point. So, Raz, based on where the boundary, the district, this lot being split, if without subdividing, would COA have any jurisdiction over construction on the northern half of this lot? Ignoring for a moment the question of a ghost lot line or anything.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think you'd have jurisdiction when a proposal to develop the newly created lot comes through, but I do think that that's something you could address as you review the subdivision itself. So again, it's a limited review as to the creation of the 2 lots, but there will be no opportunity on the newly created lot to have a review as to the appropriateness of what goes on that newly created lot.
But before it's divided, we would.
I think as a general matter, that would have to be part of what you're looking at in addressing the subdivision question itself.
Raz, Tanya Tully here.
Okay.
To answer your question, Nick, the way we have proceeded in the past is the line is the line is the line. You only review, you only have a certificate of appropriateness jurisdiction over what is in the boundary. It's not great when we have lots where it's partial, but it has happened before. The strangest case, I think, would be the construction of the community center next to the Wake County home. 10 feet of the new building was in the landmark boundary, so you reviewed that 10 feet.
Right. So in a way, this will work like Glenwood, Brooklyn. We don't really have, we never did have jurisdiction over the northern half of this lot, in the same as we don't have any jurisdiction over the back half of any of those homes in Glenwood, Brooklyn. So I think I get that. Okay, Ms. Thomas, are you to lead off on this application? If so, we'd love to hear from you.
I'm Jolie Thomas here. I would like Sean Dahl to speak to lead on the application for me.
All right, thank you. John?
Yes, sir. Thank you again for taking or allowing our case to be heard today on this extended meeting. The application, from my perspective, is fairly simple and straightforward. We have an existing lot that we are requesting be subdivided as a point of reference, and I think as noted in the staff report, this lot was previously subdivided and then back around 1989 was recombined. So we are trying to reestablish it to the 2 lots that it was prior to that recombination. The 2 lots that we are attempting to establish are similar to what was pre-existing back in the 80s. it will be two similar sized single family lots in this area here. And other than that, again, I think it's from my perspective, a pretty straightforward request, but I'm happy to answer any questions that that you guys may have at this time.
Okay. All right. That said, Ms. Thomas, you have anything else you want to say, or move on to others?
I'll just quickly add, my mom, Georgia Frazier, who is here too, she owns 801 North Bloodworth in that property. And the plan is for me to build a single family home next to her and live next to her. And her, she's suffering a muscular dystrophy and form of muscular dystrophy. And the plan is to live next door to her. Not that you all need to know all that information, but just to understand that's the future intent to build a single family house on the lot of the same scale of what's in the neighborhood.
Thank you for that information. And I'm sorry about the family situation. Ms. Bailey Taylor, anything that you need to say on behalf of planning staff?
It's been through review and it's been found to be compliant with our regulations. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that. Mr. Stegall?
No, sir, I have nothing to add.
Thank you. All right. Anything else from staff? Anything else from any of the speakers before I close the public hearing? Okay, we'll close the public hearing, turn to discussion. Well, I went too fast. Any members of the committee have questions for any of these folks? All right, I'll close the public hearing. In discussion, you ready to make a motion? Shay Height, you want to try making a motion here?
Sure. I move that based on the information contained in the application and staff's evaluation, in addition to the information presented through the evidentiary hearing, that the subdivision of 801 North Bloodworth Street into two lots is not incongruous with the special character of Oakwood based on the following suggested facts 1 through 4.
Is there a second to that motion? Okay, Janine seconds the motion. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Raise your hand. Okay, I see the hands up for Harold, for Janine, for Shay, John. For me, that motion carries. And then we need a follow-up motion from you, Rashay.
I motion that the application be approved.
And so second to that motion, John Reed seconds motion. Any discussion? All in favor say aye, raise your hand. And again, all hands went up, and I vote aye, and that's carried. Continues all the items on the agenda. I will ask one thing of staff before we leave, though, not on anything on this agenda, but the matter that we had at the business meeting with all the houses on Bloodworth. Should I recall that that for COA purposes that come to the COA committee as and when anything happens to that property?
This is Tanya here. Oh, Colette, you do.
No, that site is across the street from Prince Hall, so it would not be reviewed.
It was not in the district.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for that. Does anybody have any postmortem or comments before we adjourn the meeting? Don Reed.
I have a quick question for staff. Has 713 Hinsdale been run through RHDC? Again, I've only been on the committee since June, so I wasn't quite sure.
There was recently, this is Colette, there was recently an application for that property in February this year.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? All right, folks. I hope that Santa Claus is good to you, and that he will be able to recognize you with a mask on, and you will all have a good holiday. And So with that, folks, Merry Christmas. Meeting adjourned. See you
Happy
later.
holidays. Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you all.
All right, bye now.